All right, hello, welcome to the podcast. As you may know, the world of fitness, health, nutrition, medicine, it's confusing, right? There's so much information, conflicting information, that it almost leads you in a place of analysis paralysis, and yet we have all this info and we do nothing. This podcast is here to clear the air. My name is Vince Pitstick. I am a functional nutritionist. I have worked with thousands of clients. I have my own university where I now teach medical practitioners and coaches alike how to apply these healing modalities in their practices. And we wanted to kick this podcast off because I think the best way to learn about the body, the best way to learn about diseases and different conditions is to hear the story of real people and real situations. And I've got an amazing one for you today. I've brought along with me Mariah. Hello, Mariah. How are you?
Hi.
You doing good?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is Mariah's first podcast now.
Yeah, morning for sure.
So we're gonna give her a break, but you're doing great already. Don't worry.
Thanks.
So the point is, real people, real stories, real amazing transformations. Mariah has had one of the most miraculous recoveries from PCOS, weight loss resistance, that I have ever seen. We'll go ahead and we're going to drop her transformation. When you see it, you're going to be blown away. We're going to use this opportunity today to get into some real issues, talking about how the medical system misled her on her PCOS diagnosis, how the coaching industry incidentally aggravated the situation and how it made it worse, and then how you found yourself in this place of desperation and stuck in a body that you didn't want and had no way of getting out. And I think that's what the listeners and the watchers are going to want to hear, and that's what we're really going to cover in today's podcast. So without further ado, Mariah, tell us just a little bit about you.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Mariah Peak, and a little bit about me. I'm founder of EV Management Group, which is a finance company. We do a lot of especially debt structuring, and started that 7 years ago, which we'll probably get into why different things with PCOS and stress kind of leads you into a certain point, but started that 7 years ago out of college. And that's what I do full time now. Starting to get into real estate on my own because that's what I do pretty much for a living with clients. So they taught me, I have a lot of good mentors that taught me, how to look at financing. I'm always
so fascinated that people are good at that, because when I hear that, I think of it, it's like nails on a chalkboard.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa. I really want to get into just telling a little bit about your story early on.
Yeah.
I know that your background with health kind of started in kind of fitness bodybuilding. Is that right? Why don't you kind of tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that started, I'll go back even a little further. So in high school, I was an athlete. I showed horses, played basketball. So I was always active in nutrition, working out. That was like my starting point of like lifting weights, but I had no idea what I was doing. Then fast forward, I go to college, and I'm no longer playing basketball. I don't have that purpose of a rigid routine, and I'm just kind of built like that. So I was starting to think like maybe bodybuilding would be something fun where I have to work out, I have like discipline, but I'm not like having to do it as a sport with like a team anymore. Just do it just for me.
So right there, real quick, college. So you did high school athletics, right? Did anybody in grade school or high school or a teacher or a mentor or a coach ever talk to you about adequate nutrition?
No.
Ever once? Nothing.
I mean, like, just drink a lot of water. It was like, no value add. Drink water.
You heard it here. Hey,
when in doubt, drink.
Let me put this to bed right now. Here's the most advanced, sports nutrition you could hear. Drink water. That's it. That was the big thing.
Seriously.
Right?
Yeah.
That's it, though. It's like, I don't know, pasta up before a game.
Literally, my dad, that's so funny you said that. My dad used to get my brother Fazoli's before his football games because he's like, you need carbs to have energy. So, like, I remember as a kid watching my brother smash fettuccine Alfredo before he gone and played football. Yeah, it's hilarious. I love that you just said that.
Yeah. That's so I think for when I was playing football, all it was is they would order in like a vat of spaghetti and then like French rolls, right? And we would eat that. Yeah, there was no conversation about
No,
like adequate nutrition. There
not at
still
all.
isn't really today.
No.
And even, with guys too, if they eat enough calories, of course the energy is going to be there. But with women, I think one of the things that's missed is like they're body conscious,
Yes.
right? While they're going through the sport. And
Mhm.
so they instinctively, it seems like, will begin to restrict food because they want to look a certain way.
Mhm.
But then they're in a sport that thinks more is more. So they treat them just like the men in many ways, where it's like, if you just do the activity more, you'll be better at it. So if we add a
Exactly.
lot more, you'll do better. And the problem with continuing to add more physical activity and reducing calories is now you're staying in a very prolonged deficit.
Exactly.
Right. And when we learn about that later, and this is just one of those things that is just not covered.
Mm-mm.
And it's so obvious.
Yeah.
But when you're in grade school or high school, it's not metabolically impacting you yet. Like you can get away with it
Oh
for a
yeah,
while.
for sure.
Right.
Well, which I did,
Right. You
and
got
then
away with
that's
it
what
for a while.
and then I got triggered 26 when I'm becoming more of a woman and life's changing. I'm no longer a kid, and I'm going through these different cycles. That's
Yeah.
when we start talking.
Right. But the
honestly.
origins, and that's exactly right.
Mhm.
But I think what's really important that I really want the followers to get from this
Mhm.
is once something happens, right? Look, you're 26, you're looking in the mirror and you're like, holy shit, how do I look like this after
Mhm.
dedicating my life to health and
Yeah.
fitness? How is this
Exactly.
possible? And for everyone at home, I want you to understand it didn't start at 26.
Yeah.
It started 10 years before that, right? Where you've got a 16, 15, 14-year-old girl who's involved in athletics,
Mhm.
right? And she's also becoming body conscious.
Mhm.
And we all know that this is happening. Disordered eating, college or high school, grade school sports.
Yeah.
We all know that women are facing this challenge, and we also know that sport puts a lot of pressure on them.
Mhm.
And no one's like, it doesn't dawn on anybody to be like, hey, you know what? We should really have more awareness about disordered eating, adequate nutrition, how to feed our athletes. But nothing.
No.
Entire silence.
Well, and on top of that, I'm glad you brought that up, is so talking about the male and female. So I'm already worried about body issues, sports, trying to figure out what's healthy, not healthy, all on my own with no adequate no education on what's right or wrong, and then throw birth control on me because I'm a 16-year-old girl.
Right.
That I don't want to have heavy bleeding because I'm playing sports or riding horses or whatever other reasons you're on it. Throw that into the mix as a developing young girl into women. Knowing what I know now, what we're going to talk about was the starting point of what I'm probably dealing with now at 20, or well, now I'm 28, but at 26, when I realized I was having issues, was all stemming from really decisions I was making at 16.
Right.
But you don't know, to your point.
You don't
it's
know.
later on.
And so the
later.
evolution of things, like how do we get here? Well, we need to take it all the way back and unpack it at the beginning. And the origins always in the thousands. I've seen over 100,000 people now. And I've mentored, if you want to look at the number of coaches that I've mentored and the number of people that they've seen, and I've done their cases, you might be talking about 500,000 or something like that. And when we look at these histories, right, this is where like clinical evidence is very important. I don't care what some of the research says, and we're going to talk about the separation between PCOS research and what people really need to be doing for PCOS, because they're in direct conflict currently. But that's why clinical evidence is so much more valuable in many ways, right? And so, looking at those histories, you begin to develop the patient zero, and it all comes back to the starving and overfeeding, alcohol, birth control, right at 13 to 16.
Yep.
They all have that same experience. So you mean to tell me that that's not involved? And when you think about how impactful, we know how impactful sex hormones are on people in their development. If we were to take men, boys, let's say the same time. So you're playing what sport?
Basketball.
Basketball. Let's say that your football buddies, right? You're on birth control. You go take your birth control, and then they go into the gym and they take their testosterone shot, right? It's no different. They're both bioidentical hormone replacement. If men were doing that, everybody would think that this is extremely weird and that you don't think that it's going to have an impact. We know today that young athletes that start taking steroids, and birth control is another form of steroid, it developmentally changes them, bone structure, issues with their health later. That's why they tell boys not to take things like that, especially at a developmental age.
Yeah. But
Right.
they're letting girls,
But
no issue at 16,
90%.
have birth control.
Yeah, exactly. 90%, this is insane. 90% of women in birthing age have been on hormonal birth control for at least a year. 90%. And my whole argument with that is that that's the biggest social experiment of all humankind, isn't it? When have you ever had 90% of any population take one thing? Oh, and by the way, you don't fully understand what something like that does until you can look at the life cycle of a human being and start
Exactly.
putting together generalities or calculating statistics. You can't do it within the first year. You can have minor symptoms in the first year, but you're not going to fully understand if someone's been on birth control for a long time till they go through life.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
birth control really only became popular heavily since 1960. So if you think about that, 1960 to 2020, that's 80 years. That's only 2 lifespans. But by the second lifespan, which we could say your era, right? It jumped so fast that 90% of women.
Yeah,
So do you see what I'm saying?
exactly.
It's a social experiment, isn't it? I mean, you have to look at it that, right?
Well, now that you're seeing a lot of breast cancers and a lot of things getting directed to high estrogens and birth control and stuff, it's like to your
Stroke.
social experiment statement, it's like that second phase that are now seeing enough R&D and statistics to come back on what a long time usage looks like.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We're just starting to see, because this is the problem, is that the people doing the research are the ones that are selling the drugs oftentimes. And then the research that makes them look bad doesn't get published.
Exactly.
I mean, it's only 50% of research done on drugs is actually available to the public, actually gets published. And the research that does, and there's plenty of working group studies, working group organizations that have looked at this problem, where it's like the research that does come out always ends up favoring the medications. And it just so happens that the stuff that doesn't favor it so well is the stuff that gets put in delayed. And some of the worst offenders, like American Heart Association, the NIH, they constantly, you're supposed to publish it within a year. There's laws on the books for this. There's a whole movement called All Trials, which is where they're trying to make sure that everyone publishes the research. And some of the biggest offenders are the biggest institutions that are doing the research. And no one wants to talk about this. Everybody wants to treat research like the Bible, but no one wants to peer behind the veil because it's easier to just say the research says, and to not really dig into, well, how is this research being made? Where are we really at in the institution process of making research? Should it be just that we trust the research says as Bible? And the answer, unfortunately, I hate to tell you all at home, the answer is no. It doesn't mean that we don't look to research to say, what is it pointing to? But we certainly don't rest everything that we believe and trust and understand on whatever the current research is. I mean, if you looked in the last couple years, how research went one way and it went another way, right? So it's not, they want it to be an exact science, but the coming of understanding of things, especially complex systems like the human body, you can't take 2 variables and just go, what do these 2 variables have in relationship, and test that in a controlled environment, and then think that you're going to fully understand that behavior in the real world when you've got multiple systems all impacting each other. Do you see the problem? And when it comes to endocrine disorders like PCOS, there's so many variables that you can't get concrete about it almost in a double-blind placebo-controlled environment. You almost have to look at epidemiological studies, which are looking at populations over time. Well, the problem with epidemiological studies is you need exactly that, time. And time is what people don't have, because you at 26 needed answers now. Not 30 more years to figure out, oh, this was a problem, let's not do this. Now you're 60 and you've already lived it.
Exactly.
So this is the issue when people say, oh, the science says, and this is what we're going to go by. No, there are millions of people who need answers now that's not found in the research. And we're not going to sit around and wait for them to prove it 30 years later.
No.
We're going to find answers, and we do that through clinical evidence.
What you're doing, Vince, is case studies, like women like myself that luckily I'm intuitive enough because of the competing to know something was wrong and I went and worked with you to fix it. But like,
let's talk about that
yeah.
though. Let's dial into that.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a 16-year-old female who's trying to find out how to make a way for herself,
Mm-hmm.
which is completely irresponsible that you didn't have the guidance there.
Yeah.
Then what happens is we go through life, we get past high school,
Mm-hmm.
we hit college,
Yeah.
right? And college, now we're really body conscious,
Mm-hmm.
and we have to find something outside of sport, right? Sport was our identity.
Yeah.
And now what?
Yeah. So it was the identity, and it's hard, like going through those transitions. Like I was used to, like, you know, sports, you have a schedule, you have to get up early, you have to go practice. I lost that because college is like, oh yeah, you got school, but that's it. What do I do in the morning? What do I do in the evening? So I needed something to stay competitive because that's just me naturally.
Right.
And so I was like, all right, a couple of people at the gym that I used to work out with were like, I think you can maybe compete because you kind of got that look or that physique. So I went for it, and I started competing starting in 2012, and I officially stopped my competing legacy, if you want to call it, in 2015.
Right.
So I did about 3 years of, I think that was about 6 shows in total that I did.
Yeah,
And
but let's stop you there because part of the problem is personality, where you're either all in or all not, because you did those 6 shows in about a year.
Probably like almost a year, yeah, like 2 years.
Yeah, well, year and a half. We did the math. It was 6 shows when you're first starting. Year and a half is a lot.
Yes.
So for anybody listening to this is where
Yeah.
you know, the competition and then the medical kind of come together, because you know what you have to understand about bodybuilding. It can be the greatest thing in the world. The structure, like learning about sports, learning about yourself, testing yourself. On the other hand, okay, when you're not, when the messaging is all like, go hard, go home, one more rep, you know, sleeping's for losers or whatever, sleep when you're dead, or, you know, well, all that messaging, what it tells you is that more is more. And more isn't more. In fact, more, especially on the endocrine system of a female, can lead to life-ruining consequences. And that's exactly what happened to you.
Yes.
So walk us through the into competition, and then what starts happening.
Yeah, so to your point, I was over-exercising, probably under-eating now that I know what I know now, but at the time, this is my first experience.
Give them an idea of like, how many calories, what were your macros in general, how many days training, and how much cardio?
So I'll start with training. So I was doing probably 6 days of training, an hour of fasted cardio in the morning.
What kind of training?
So what I would do in the morning was an hour of fasted cardio, and then at night after class, I would probably do an hour and a half of weight training. So I feel like it was almost like 1,000 rep workouts. So intense workouts, and each day was different.
Resistance training, weights.
Barbells,
anaerobic, right?
I mean, you're doing all the hard work.
We ain't talking about no Pilates or yoga over here.
No, I mean, you're going from an hour of intense cardio in the morning to class all day, which is another form of mental stress, to then physical stress again after class with working out for an hour and a half.
Right.
So
and at first, wow, it looks good.
Oh, right? Yeah, it was great.
Looking good.
It was great.
Nice and crispy, the body, right? Everything's looking good. Right. And you know, you, by the way, most people, when they start working out, get energy from it, because especially what you didn't know is you're an androgen dominant female. And I don't want people to get lost in the PCOS. This happens to women that just have that their highest hormone is androgens, testosterone and androstenedione. All right. And androstenedione isn't talked about enough, but you know, many women that are muscular, they will be dominant this, and that actually, those androgens give you energy at first. So then you just do more and sleep less.
Yeah.
I mean, there was probably a while that you were running on 4 or 5 hours. For sure.
Exactly.
And just fine.
Yeah, no problem.
Right?
Like, easy.
At first.
At first. So this is what we're getting into.
At first.
Yeah.
Right? It always is at first. And my clients and people watching this, like, people have the hardest time understanding that, like, what worked before, what your body was willing to tolerate, doesn't work now.
No.
Because you stayed doing that thing too long, and now your body is maladapted to it. In fact, it will resist it in ways that you don't like. Fat gain, swelling, acne, hair loss, gut issues, blah.
Exactly.
Right? And they go, but it just was working.
Yeah.
It just was working. The problem with that is that your body tolerated it. There's a difference. And it allowed you to do it for a certain amount of time. But because nobody guided you correctly, you stayed there. You know, like the diet that you diet with is not the diet that you maintenance with.
No, not at all.
And when you're doing 6 shows in a row, You can't actually come out.
Yeah, I never reversed.
Let's be honest.
I never reversed out of it.
Imagine that.
At all.
Never heard of that before.
No.
No. You know what I mean? All right. So listen, we meet, right?
Yep.
We meet. And so similar friends.
Yep. Exactly.
And because I'm still a competitor coach. You were a competitor.
Mm-hmm.
We had friends that were in the diet space.
Mm-hmm.
Met at church, actually, ironically enough.
Yeah.
And so
we did.
this is now, because we're in 2022. Is this 2018?
This was about 3 years ago.
19 then. About 2019.
Yeah, 18, 19,
Early
something.
19.
Exactly.
Probably. And this part's fun because I got to know you a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time you were in a building phase.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of noticed that I felt like, based on what you were eating and the way you were training, that you shouldn't be holding on or gaining the weight that you were. It was more watery. It was a little bit heavier in the fat.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't make much sense. It wasn't adding up, right? And I know you'd went through different dieting phases and things started to really slow down and got harder. Can you walk people through that, so that at home, there are thousands of women right now that are in the midst of this. They're at some gray scale of it. They're at some point. Help deliver it in a way that they could see it through your eyes so that they can resonate with it and go, oh, that's what's happening to me.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So what happened was, to your point, with competing and not properly reversing out of it, I just kept the same principles, right? Like I just toned it down a little bit, but I was still working out 5 days a week. I was still, now I know, under eating, but I thought that was the right thing to do. But what happened, and this is to your point, when I hit like 25, 26, kind of right around when we met, that like plateaued. So I was still putting my time in, right? So what you think is, you go to the gym, you're supposed to lose weight or maintain your weight. I was still eating low calories. You don't think you're going to gain weight. So I was doing the things that I've always known to work. But then all of a sudden at 25, 26, it stopped. Like I said, I'm still eating less and working out a lot, but I started gaining weight.
Right.
I started like flatlining. I got really inflamed and I had no idea what was happening because all that worked.
Here's a perfect example of where research goes awry. So she's no longer in a building phase and was having trouble cutting. The research shows that you need about 1 gram per pound, right, of protein to build muscle. And you were even a little higher than that. I think you were probably at 1.2, 1.4 grams of protein per pound at some point. The problem is with that is, after that, cutting, you don't need that. In fact, muscle maintenance, the data is pretty clear, has a lot more to do with essential amino acids and not just the BCAAs found in complete proteins from the macro protein that you would get from chicken, fish, whatever. And so a lot of women are dieting in the same macro proportions that they are building, and it doesn't make any sense. And so the body gets adapted to all that protein and starts converting it into sugar, which is exactly why you stopped developing, right? It goes from pro-adaption into maladaption. You didn't seasonally fluctuate out. This is the problem with research, because all the research is really short research done on men, by the way, that are metabolically healthy, that says, oh, you need a lot of protein. And it shows positive gains in muscle. They take that information and then extrapolate it to everything and every type of person, including women. Oh, a woman's just a small man, so we'll just give her high protein. We'll put it into a deficit with high protein because it'll maintain muscle. That's not, the evidence of that is not clear. There are plenty of diets that maintain muscle, and it doesn't have to be high protein. And in fact, when you're dieting, you don't need to be training as much.
Yeah.
You need to be doing other things. You can't take that same stress of physical training, not deload it, not switch energy systems, because it leads to inefficiency. And in some people, it can drive disease, which is part of what triggered it in you. Now, are we blaming bodybuilding? Are we blaming fitness? No, we're not. We're saying it is a part of the environment that led to where you're at. And that's for millions of other women in America and the world, right? Going through this. So when I met her, I'll say this, right? When I met her, I saw all the signs, right? I knew, because I've been doing this for a while, and a lot of people watching this, if you're wondering why your metabolism's acting a little funny, you need to change course.
Yeah.
You need to change course now. You need to revamp it. if you get your metabolism working the same way again, then you're safe to go back in. But don't all these coaches just think, well, it doesn't work as well, let's just go harder.
That's the
Well,
opposite.
you did that. How did that go for you?
Gained weight, got inflamed, got resistant where I couldn't even lose weight. So to most of us, we think, okay, cut more calories, do more exercise. No, that was actually doing the inverse. I was even getting worse in the situation I was in. So you brought me to the workout less, kind of eat more mentality, where then it stopped stressing my body. I got less inflamed.
Well, let's go ahead and stop here. Let's actually have how this conversation went.
Yeah.
For everyone at home. This is important for me, right?
Yeah.
So we sat down, we had a come to Jesus moment.
We did.
You were only a year into the problem. I saw what was going to be at 2 years, 3 years. And I said to you, like, you got to switch it up. And you weren't ready to hear that.
No.
Right. And most of the girls right now are not ready to hear this. Right. And what did I tell you?
You're going to call me in a couple years.
I told you that you were going to call me in a couple years and that I'd fix it. And you were like, nah, this guy's.
I was like, okay, whatever.
This guy's so full of shit. He has no idea what he's talking about. Right. But here we are.
I know.
About 2 years later.
And I call you.
Here we are. I get that call. And then I did exactly what I said I was going to do, didn't I?
You sure
We fixed
did.
it. We sure did. Look at you, right? You look amazing.
We did.
Phenomenal.
Thank you.
But I don't want to we can't get to dessert before the peas.
Yeah.
Okay. We're still in the weeds on this thing, right?
Yeah.
So we have that conversation. You start looking into things you had never heard of before. Remember, you started looking into testing and then hormonal issues and PCOS, right? And like what is going wrong with me? Walk us through that.
Yeah. So when I started feeling off, and this was right about the time I was maybe a year from calling you, I just woke up one day, something was off. And at that time, the kind of advice I was getting from like a third party doctor was like, let's get blood work and just see what's going on with your hormones. Well, immediately got blood work. My hormones were every which way they should be. So that's what started triggering my mindset. Like,
you mean your hormones were off, way off?
Yes, they were way off. Like how you like to think they should be. I wasn't.
The exact opposite.
I was exact
high
opposite.
Estrogen, low progesterone.
Yep, spot on.
Right.
And so that's what started thinking, okay, this isn't about not exercising enough or not dieting enough. I'm already doing that. This is an internal thing that I really can't. At the time, I wasn't able to control because I didn't realize it was an issue.
So let's stop here. So what do you got to tell to all the people that are out there that say that it's all about calories in and calories out and hormones don't matter? Look at the camera and tell them.
I'm going to respectfully say it's bullshit. I know if I'm not allowed to cuss because that's how severe it is, because it's all about hormones. And like, I don't want women to get discouraged when they are exercising and they are dieting and aren't losing weight, say in their 30s or 40s. It has nothing to do with you not putting the work or dieting right. It's because your hormones literally are not there to help you. And that's my case. Is I was doing the dieting, the exercising, but was getting zero results.
So then, okay, well, wait, but here, let me play devil's advocate here. I'm one of these weight loss resistance deniers on social media because I think I know everything. And I'm going to tell you, well, the data says that you don't know how to count macros and that you're overeating or that you're not telling the truth. Tell the camera. I mean, you are a macroaholic.
Yeah, I mean, I've counted every single macro, the MyFitnessPal to the T, where I'm logging it to my coaches to tell them, like, no, I was doing all that. It wasn't like I just took a year off and stopped working out, dieting. I mean, I was still on it, like I was losing weight, but I wasn't losing weight. And if anything, I was creating more issues that we unearthed.
Yeah, she was with a great coach, by the way, at the time.
Yeah.
A shout out to Adam.
Yeah, Adam Atkins.
He's a great coach.
Awesome.
So again, even with the best intentions and a lot of the right tools, this can happen, right? And so he was watching, you were watching. It was a controlled environment. So it's a perfect example of how we absolutely know that weight loss resistance is real. You can't deny that.
Yeah,
okay?
I would say as a case study.
She's right here.
Done it all.
Here's the white elephant or whatever, the white rhino or whatever you want to say, patient zero. She's right here. So for everybody who wants to say whatever they want to say, go ahead and tell her about her. Tell her about why it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Because she lived it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, oh, this isn't real. It's 2 calories in, calories.
No.
Okay. Tell her that to her face,
no, I'd be
please.
pissed.
I'd love to hear all about it, about how it's just calories.
Yeah,
Point in case, right?
it's so much more than that.
Right. So for anyone out there who's if a doctor or a coach is telling you that you just need to eat less and move more, and you're like, Doc, I'm doing that, you can't listen to those
No.
people. They don't know what they're talking about. Because once your body gets adapted, you go into upside down world, meaning we're the opposite of what your body's gotten adapted to what you're doing. And actually what you have to do is the opposite of that, which is what's going to be against the primary understanding and research that exists, because they're not doing research on people who are metabolically resistant.
Yeah.
So of course they're not going to understand you. You're reading research that isn't your population, which is exactly the damn problem, right? I digress.
No, you're good.
I got on one.
It's all right.
I do that.
You're good.
I'd like to hear more than, okay, because you then go to this is the part, the medical system. Like, let's get in. So now, like everyone does, you get messed up in fitness and everything else going on, and then you eject to the medical system.
Yep.
What answers did they have for you there?
Yeah, so
Mariah?
when I first got that blood work that I told you about, that hormones were issue, I was like, immediately after that, I was like, I should go see my doctor, right? My gynecologist that deals with hormones, and I was clearly on birth control at the time, so I was like, well, maybe the birth control is causing my hormone issues.
Do you remember what birth control you were on? I didn't
It
ask this before
was
the show.
Nordal 777. It was the lowest dosage of birth control.
There we go.
Yep.
Low dose hormones. I mean, she has very little estrogen in her body. Okay. And then when you're stressing, and this is why I believe that you were, because you're non-classic PCOS, which we're going to get into, your birth control absolutely aided and abetted in you getting the condition because it forced your estrogen really low. When you do that and you're working out a lot, that makes your body make more androgens through DHEA. Your adrenal glands make more hormones, okay? So you're making all these androgens. The research shows you lift weights, you make androgens. And then you've got a drug in there, a steroid, suppressing estrogen. Estrogen and androgens have a negative feedback loop where they keep each other in check. And if you forcibly suppress estrogen, there's nothing to check androgens. And so then if androgens get too high in certain people, that's what's going to start popping cysts. And there you go, non-classical PCOS. And it was done from a fitness environment mixed with the wrong birth control. Which is why I cannot stress how important it is to know what birth control you're using. Boom, right there, mic drop. I'm going to walk out. That's it. I'll see you guys. I'm out. No, I'm kidding. Please. All right. But you see where I'm going with this, right? And so this is what happened to you, right? And so now you're back to the medical system asking them what to do. And what did they tell you?
So I told
I can't wait for this. I'm sure it's incredibly insightful.
I'm so still to this day dumbfounded about it. So on my own, after I got that blood work done, I was like, you know what, and I did all my own little research and whatever. I was like, I'm going to get off birth control, and then I'm going to go see my gynecologist and tell him, hey, I'm off for a couple months. And so when I got off of it and I went to my gynecologist saying like, hey, I have hormone issues and I think I might have PCOS because I've done some research about this and I think I'm a candidate, immediately he wanted me to go back on birth control because he thought I'm not ovulating. And so he offered the IUD, the copper IUD. And I'm like, no, like, I don't want to get on anything. I totally want to like recycle my body and refresh and get this corrected because I don't want to have long-term issues.
Perfect example. Any of you ever on the back of a cereal box? Yeah, you know the mazes when you were a kid? Producer Keone, you remember the mazes on the back of cereal boxes? You remember them, right?
Oh, yeah.
Did you ever do one?
For sure.
Okay. So you don't have to be Albert Einstein to understand that if you lose your way in life, the answer back to the path usually isn't a bunch of new experimental things. The way back, just like on the cereal box, if I get stuck and I'm like, shit, how did I get here, right? What do? You go back to the beginning.
Exactly.
Right? So the answer isn't, because how many times when you get stuck or something and you try to force it and you just make it worse?
Yeah.
Right? That's problem solving 101. Like, don't keep screwing it up more. Back out and then move forward, right? That's simple human logic that ain't got nothing to do with advanced medicine. That's anything in life, right? But they didn't want to do that. They want to complicate it. Let's do more medicines. Let's do more. Let's add more to the problem. How about more is the problem? How about we do less? How about we back out, let our body kind of collect itself, and then figure the best course of action. That may still include birth control for some people. That may include other medications at first for people. But at least you go back to a base norm so you know where you're at, or you got no way of figuring out which way to go. right?
Exactly.
So again, so the answer that came from there is eat less, move more, and birth control.
Yeah. And I'm
Wow,
like,
astounding.
this is what created, now that I know, the issue.
Right.
So I was not happy with the answer. You like to think this is why your insurance, you have, are the medicines that we do to go to. So I then elected a third party, Dr. Lyle, who's, a third party doctor, preventive more maintenance doctor that helps with hormones and all that my mom's worked with. And I was like, hey, I did my own independent blood work. I went and saw my doctor. I'm not happy with it. Can you please help me here? So I went to her, that's more on the female medicine side, and she's like, you know what? Let's order a lab for PCOS. Ordered a lab for PCOS, and then
Which was a scan of your ovaries.
that's
right?
correct. Yep, a scan of my
And
ovaries.
they found cysts.
And they found, I was on the lighter end because I know there's a spectrum of severe.
We're going to talk about that right now.
And low, but yeah, that's ultimately what really triggered to then I'm like, this is a whole new world that I'm entering into.
So there are 4 types of PCOS, and Mariah actually has non-classical. That's more adult onset. And this is one of the issues when you look at research, you're just looking at classic PCOS, high testosterone, high insulin. Okay. That, if you just reduce calories, will help it at first. For Mariah, the low calories is part of what caused it. And that's where it gets people really confused. And there's this huge conflicting world between people who are in the know, like national organizations like the PCOS Challenge, largest in the United States, is fighting to help get the right information, petitioning Congress to get physicians to have better tools than birth control and eat less and move more. Because you are a perfect example.
Yeah.
Eat less, move more, sealed your fate.
And birth control.
So we can't sit here and say that that works for everybody. And when I talk to some of you fitness influencers online and we have public debates, I won't name names today, about, the answer to PCOS is caloric restriction. What would you say to that?
That's the reason I have PCOS, is because caloric restriction.
Well, that's a little interesting, don't you think? And there are tens of thousands of stories like Mariah all over the United States right now. And so this is how harmful the wrong information can be. Because also they're not following these women, because I couldn't figure out why I knew that didn't work, because we tried it for years. It didn't work. Or if it did work at first, it stopped working.
Yeah.
Or if it did work, it made it worse, meaning that the hormones got worse, the cysts got worse, the symptoms got worse, but you lost some weight.
Yeah.
You see? Now, if you take somebody who is insulin resistant and has high insulin, and you reduce their calories because they've been overeating and eating bad food and sitting on the couch, that type of individual will benefit. But 50% of people who are reading research and being proactive are not that person. So that's when I figured out the answer. Why there's such a disparity. Because it has everything to do with participant selection. I figured it out. The people that actually participate in research are people who have time to do so and need the money. Okay, those are people who tend to be at home more, who tend to eat more of a standard American diet. But the people that are going to be proactive about that research are not those people. They are the overdoers, always working, people pleasing, right?
Yeah.
Overly driven, training too much, eating too little, go, go, go.
That's me. I'll take accountability.
Hi, I'm Mariah, and I'm an addict.
I'm literally everything you just described.
Literally gonna be super ripped, do shows, and solve work hunger. No big deal. Just I'm gonna do it all real quick, and then I'm gonna have lunch.
Yeah.
Right. That's the mindset,
Yeah.
and so that's the problem. So if you're telling people how to live their life, and you're using research that was done on populations of women or demographics of women that is not the demographic of women that the person you're talking to falls in, you are endangering them. You're not helping them. And that's why we have to be very, very careful about what the research says.
Yeah.
Particularly when it comes to women, because it is hurting them today. The misinformation is rampant because you can't generalize functional nutrition.
No.
You can't generalize the functions of the body. You have to be very targeted and specific to that person and their demographic. When you throw research their way, slap them over the head with it and say, this is what it says, and this is what you do.
Yeah.
And if this isn't working, then do more of it. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would completely agree. And you brought up a great point. Like, my experience is completely different than someone else's. Like, clearly I overexercise and underate, but that next woman could have a different thing. So you can't just white label a system for.
All right, so I have to apologize. We went on a tangent, and we got to kind of wrap this up a little bit. I really want to get into, though, the end here.
Yeah, so pretty much I gave you a call, as you told me like a couple years ago, and I was like, Vince, you know, I've done my own homework. Like, I'm coming in kind of realizing I have some issues. I did some blood tests, and I think I have hormone issues, PCOS, and I'm resistant.
So it's kind of like exactly what I told you was going to happen to you.
Yeah.
That's weird.
To a T. Everything
weird,
from even outside fitness, like my life being overly stressed
Feels
and
like
working.
Deja vu.
Yeah, it is deja vu.
Interesting.
I'll give you your moment here.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I need that. I need that. All right. So listen, you came in and I sat you down and what did I tell you?
This is an all or nothing program. And if you're going to do it, you need to follow it to a T and do it right. But you need to be ready to do this. And, you know, I wanted to come to you, I think, a year previous, but I wasn't ready for that commitment. And we signed
But I told, I guaranteed you, what did I tell you? I said, if you do this,
you will fix your issues you're having. And
guarantee you
here
success.
We are.
I made no, there was no confusion.
No.
PCOS therapy, ladies and gentlemen, I'm telling you right now, if you turn it up on its head and do exactly everything the system's telling you not to do, it will almost ensure your success if you do it correctly. At Nutrition Dynamic, Mariah is part of a program that comes with a program promise. We've got PCOS kind of so dialed in and figured out that I told you if you did it, I guaranteed you results within 12 weeks, or we would work with you for free till you did. Because we have real answers. We know that if you reduce stress, you actually increase food for a while, drop protein really hard, decrease your training, focus on yoga, lists, all this other stuff, work the systems of the body, right? Now, depending on the type of PCOS, will change what you do. You have non-classical, so we have to focus more on glucagon rather than insulin because you didn't have high insulin, did you?
No.
Your regular insulin. So what good is insulin-resistant research at PCOS to you?
Doesn't apply.
Right, because you're non-classical. You don't have the hair, the acne. You know, I think it's important that we highlight this and what you went through, because 50% of people that have PCOS, it is the fastest growing endocrine disorder in the country. It's ravaging India, Australia, Philippines, and here. But 50% don't know they have it, because it's non-classical. There's four different types, and most are more adult onset. Classical usually happens and sets in after your first couple periods. But you didn't have that, right? That's most women. And it's growing so fast, and because of the misinformation, and because of the lack of research, and because of the bad advice, 50% go undiagnosed, and they're doing things right now to their bodies, trying to fight a weight problem when it's a hormone problem.
Yeah.
And they're walking right into a trap. And that is unacceptable, knowing what we know today. And so I'm so glad that you came on here and explained your story so that people can kind of see what happened. You know, and now why don't you tell them a little bit about your results? Where are we at? We have had an epic transformation. We'll pop up her after photo here. She looks absolutely amazing.
Oh my God.
We're down how much weight?
I think like almost 40 pounds now.
40 pounds.
We're down 40 pounds.
We got abs popping, right? We got side striations a little bit in the quads. Now we're having to shrink, so the butt's gone a little bit. She's been having a problem with that. But that's how you do it. You have to shrink it down. You have to get the waist in first and get them metabolically healthy, and then you build out the extremities.
Exactly.
So we're getting ready to do that. We want to lose about 3% more body fat because we want to make sure that we've gotten rid of most of the metabolic condition, and a lot of that inflamed fat was causing some of that resistance. But you couldn't lose weight for years, right?
For years. And like what we're talking about, eating less wasn't doing anything for me. So as a woman, we were trained to be like, oh, just cut your calories and you'll lose weight. I already did that. So what am I going to do? Not eat to lose weight? So at that point, I knew we had to do something.
That's right.
Change it.
And I just couldn't be more thrilled. Your energy, your aura, right? Obviously physically, but again, your personality. When we had talked the first time, I mean, you were just depressed. I mean, I could hear in the phone, there was just malaise, monotone. You were just stressed to the max. And so when I get to talk to you today, I just see a different person,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, I feel like a different person, and I'm so happy and thankful for coming back a couple years and tail between my legs and doing the program, because I would do it 100 times over again. So I'm really happy with everything that we've been doing.
All right, well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I want to thank everyone for watching or listening to the podcast. If you like what we're talking about, please comment, like, subscribe. We need your support to get out amazing stories like Mariah's to people who need to hear it. So thanks.